Hi, I'm John, and today I'm going to show you how you can create this magnificent dynamic report that allows you to filter and sort data from a much larger data source in a very dynamic and user-friendly way. We're going to build the entire thing from scratch, starting with a completely blank spreadsheet. But as usual, if you want the finished product with all the formulas set up as well, then you just click the link in the description and it'll be straight on your desktop machine. No email or details asked for. Let's get moving right away. I'm starting now with essentially my raw data. It happens to be a report with the columns I need, but it could be any report you want. It could be any number of rows or columns, as long as it's got the columns that you want. In this example, I'm going to keep it relatively straightforward by having all the columns that are in my data appear in my report. Now that's not essential, but if you don't have that, then you're going to need to create multiple filter formulas to pick up individual columns, which I don't want to do right now. So the first thing I'm going to do with this data is turn it into a table. I do this with almost all data in Excel these days. So Control T will highlight the area of the data and say, just hit OK, and it'll turn it into a table. I don't want it to look like this. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to remove all the formatting off of my table by going to the top left corner format on the table design menu. So it now looks essentially exactly like it did a minute ago. I'm going to start a new sheet, and somewhere in here, I'm basically going to say, start creating my report. First off, I want to pick up the headers that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to say that it equals, and if you hover over the table, I can pick up the entire table headers there and hit OK. So I've now picked up all those table headers, and I'm going to make them the same width by copying and then doing a paste special column widths on there. So I know we're going to have the right amount of room for all our data. And then next, what I'm going to do is basically use the filter function to bring through some of that data. So first off then, let's just bring it through manually and put a manual filter on it. And then we'll use the drop downs in a second. So we want this entire table. So I'm going to highlight everything. Or I could have just typed, it's called table 1, terrible name, but for the moment we'll leave it table 1. How do I want to filter that? So I want to say, I'm going to filter it by region. So I'm just going to say that the region in table 1 equals, let's just keep it simple for the minute. Let's just put it in manually. So we're just going to say it equals the northeast. So we've got essentially our, very basic kind of filter report here, but we've manually typed in the filter. Let's take some of the conditional formats and the formatting from the original report now. So I'm just going to take a single row from that report. It doesn't have to be the top row, any row will do. And I'm going to put it sort of above or something like that. It doesn't really matter at the moment. And that will bring forward all of our conditional formatting and stuff. So now I'm going to go to the conditional formatting to manage the rules and change it to this worksheet. And here's my two formats. I'm just going to make sure that they apply now to the correct regions. So they're saying K and I 3. Well, obviously we don't want that. We want it to start on this K1, start on K7. So let's just delete all of that. So from K7 and put a colon. And we need to make sure that this covers a big enough area for anything that we're going to want to do. So I don't know how big your report's going to be, but mine, there's no way it's ever going to get to 100 rows. It's probably only going to be like 20 or something. So I'm just going to cover my back a bit and put 100 rows on. You don't want to go too mad on there. You don't want to put 1 million or anything unless you need it, because otherwise you're just effectively using up the memory of your machine and you're just going to slow your spreadsheet down. So be reasonable, definitely cover your back, but don't go crazy. So we've now got a bit of formatting, for example, but also we want the number formats from here. So let's just take, say, all of that there, do the format painter, and maybe again go down to like sort of 100 rows or something. 100 rows odd, doesn't really matter. We now have something looking a lot more reasonable. And if we were to manually change this northeast here to some other, let's just say northwest, you can see we've got a changing report, a filter report essentially built already. So that's good start. Let's get this region working from a drop-down list now. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to add another sheet. I'm going to call this lookups. What we want here is we want a list of regions. How are we going to get a list of regions? Well, I'm just going to link it straight back to our region table. So I'm going to say I want a unique list of all the regions in my original table. Table 1 region. There's my unique list of regions. Now, I always like to put that in alphabetical order, so I'm just going to embed that inside a sort function. So it's in alphabetical order. I can now delete this row completely. So I just did shift space there to delete it, to highlight it, and control minus to delete it. I'm going to set up a region filter. I'm going to call it region 1 because we're going to put 2 of them on. For now, we'll just stick to 1 region. I'm going to put some data validation in that. I'm going to make it a list, and the source of my list is on my lookup page. Link it to that cell and hit the hash key to give me the entire spill range. So should I ever get more regions appear in my report, they would also be listed. Hit OK on that, and let's just check, is that working? Yes, that is working. And of course, it's doing nothing because we've not linked it to anything. But now we can link this region. Instead of a hard-coded region there, we can just link it to that drop-down box, push F4 to lock in that cell reference. We now have a working drop-down selector report. Let's set up our next one. So I'm just going to put a bit of formatting on this. So let's make that a bit of a mid-dark and that very light dark, and perhaps put some top and bottom borders around it and make that bold. Let's do something similar here, top and bottom borders, make it a mid sort of darkness. And then we'll copy that, or we'll just copy it straight underneath, and we'll call it this time region 2. And that should be linking to the exact same drop-down box, so it should just work straight away. But of course, it's not linked to our filter report. So how are we going to do that? Our first filter is that the table 1 region equals D2. What we want to do is put 2 criteria in it. And if we want it to be an OR, so it equals D2 or it equals something else, we need to add these 2 numbers together. And you can see as that's highlighted, up above it, you see it saying false, 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 etc. And that is the result that that is giving. How are we going to add our region 2 into this filter? Well, we just need to add it together, actually. Now, you would think if we do that, just say we want exactly the same thing equal to D3 and hit enter, we get an error. And what we need to do is actually put that in brackets first before we add it together. And then it treats it as numbers. And when we do that, both regions appear as if by magic. And now we can change the different regions and we have like a perfectly functioning spill report based off of those filters. But there's a little niggle in my mind, and that is that you cannot sort this report. So if you wanted to sort this, let's put something a bit bigger on, like a bit of a longer report. If I wanted to sort this by variance, I go to the data menu and try and sort it. It says you can't sort part of an array. So I want to be able to sort this. How are we going to do this? The answer is we need some helper columns first. So let's give ourselves a bit of room on the right-hand side here. So as before, what I'm going to do is kind of set up like a manual version and then link it to a drop-down box. Eventually, I want to end up with a drop-down box where we can pick the column we want to sort by and whether we want that ascending or descending. But let's just start a bit simpler first, hey? So first of all, I want to know the value that I want to sort by. because essentially what I'm going to be doing is embedding this entire filter statement inside a sort by function. And that will allow me to pick some column that I want to sort by. The problem is which column. It could get very long, this formula, so I just want to be able to link it to another column somewhere that's generating along with the report, which we can then change at will using another function. First off, let's get our sort values in. So sort values, and I just want to pick up one column for the moment manually from our spilled list here. And the way that I want to do that is, normally what I would do is I would say I want to use the index function to pick up this entire spilled array, and I want all the rows, so I'll just miss that argument and I'll pick up the column number I want. So let's pick up versus budget, because it's a pretty sensible thing to be sorting by. So that's in column 6. So there. So that is our spilled list then, and that is dynamically linked to whatever we change our report to. So that's all great. The only problem is if I then say that I want to sort this formula by that column or a rank of that column or something, I'll instantly run into a circular reference issue, because this is determined off of this and we're trying to determine that off of that. So I basically need to embed that entire formula there inside my index function, like that. That way, this is in no way linked to that, and I can just then reference it in some way to sort it. I now need to determine the sort order. So let's just call this sort order. Now it would be nice if I could just use the rank function, PQ, the number being this number here, and the reference being the exact same thing. And that gives me a nice sort order. Great, you might think. The problem is, if I happen to pick up a text-based column, that formula errors. So it's only going to work for the numbers. And I want complete flexibility in everything I do in Excel. Remove flexibility, you cause errors, you generally end up with more work than you thought. So how are we going to get a similar function to work on text? Well, it's kind of an odd one actually. But what we need to do is we need to use the countifs function. Our criteria, rather strangely, is that we want to say it's less than the item that we're looking at in the spilled range again. So it's a very strange looking formula, but it's basically going to count everything that falls earlier than that in the alphabetical list. If I hit enter, we're getting a 0 and a 6. It doesn't make much sense, but if I was to link that to column 2 now, you'll see we're getting an accurate representation of the position in the alphabetical list of counties. So it's working for text. Is it working for numbers? Let's just jump to a numbers column. Yes, it works for numbers too. So this is our kind of universal kind of rank formula using countifs less than the current cell. Kind of hard to get your head around, but you might just need to trust me on this. If you want to look it up, go ahead. Now we can build this into our filter function, so we can embed the whole thing in a sort by function, and we're going to say that we want to sort it by this spilled list here. We basically can sort by any column by changing this number here. So if we want to sort it by the budget variance, we'll put a 6 there. It sorts by budget variance. We want to sort it by region, we just put a 1 there. So now we just need to find a way of linking this all together. So let's set up some more drop-down boxes. I'm going to copy this one over here. I'm going to rename it sort by. At the moment, it's linked to a data validation list on the lookup page of regions. So we just want one of columns. So let's create one called columns. I'm going to use the format painter to just paint that format there. And this time I'm just going to take my columns from my report. I could take it from my original source data, given they're the same, but I'm just this time going to take it from the report. Click on there and hash list and hit enter, which will spill them out across horizontally, and then just embed that in a transpose function like that. There's our list of columns. Now I'm going to leave that in the same order because that's the order that they appear on the report. So there's no point sorting them or anything. Now I can link my data validation list on that drop down to this report here. So again, put the hash symbol on and pick up the whole thing. Okay. We now have a list of columns. How do we get this to pick up that? Because what we need is the number of the column. Well, let's find the column number of the sort. Now this one, we can use the X match or match, doesn't really matter. So our lookup value is this figure here, which we'll lock in. Where are we looking for it? We're going to look for it in the spilled range of the column headers of the report. And we want an exact match. So we now have a number that represents the column we just picked. And so we can change our formula in there, remove that hard coding and link it to the result of that match. Now we genuinely have a sort by function with flexibility to change the regions and change what we're sorting by. What I want to do though is go even further than this, and I want to be able to dictate whether we're going ascending or descending order. And to do that, I don't actually need to do much more work, because if you look at our sort by function and you go to the end of it, you can see that the next available argument, if I hit a comma, is whether I want to sort ascending or descending. So it's a 1 or a -1. So if I put -1, we'll get it like that. If I change that, -1, we'll get it sorting like that. And a +1 will sort in the opposite direction. So we've got that variable. We just need to generate a 1 or a -1 somehow on our report. So I'm going to put the order here. And I'm just going to create another drop-down box here. So sort by. Call that direction. And on the data validation, I can't be bothered to set up any kind of lookup or anything. I'm just going to put ascending, comma, descending as a manual list. So now we can say ascending or descending. Of course, it's not linked to anything. So now I'm going to put in the order thing here, if that equals ascending. Probably ought to put a capital on that. Then that's going to be a 1. Otherwise, it's going to be a -1. Now, hopefully, now that's linked up, ascending and descending. Yeah, 1 and -1. Now, I just change that variable at the end of the formula to link to that cell. We now have a working ascending, descending button. We can now effectively sort and filter this report here from our raw data. We've got all our conditional formatting working, the lengths working. All we need to do to make it look even more professional is just go on the view menu here, knock out the grid lines, hide a few columns like that. And here we go, a fantastic little dynamic kind of dashboard report. And this could of course be any length. If you want to take this a step further than one of my previous videos, I show you how you can apply conditional formatting to reports that are expanding and contracting like this, so that they always have borders around them, bounded rows, etc. Loads of different techniques involved in that video that make it look even more professional and user-friendly. So make sure you go and check that out right away. My aim here is to make sure you get better Excel results faster. So I hope you've achieved that today, and I'll see you soon.